Have you heard of the Pono Music Player? If not, you've probably been living under a rock for the past 2 months. Basically, this thing is a high quality iPod. And by high quality, I mean high bit rate, high sample rate, playback. That's its selling point. Now, before I forget to tell you, please go check out my video called HD Music Quality, Pono Quality versus CD and MP3. You need to watch that video in order to understand some of the things I'm about to say in this video. But this is my reaction to the Kickstarter promo video, and really just the Kickstarter campaign in general, and really why I don't think it's necessary, or completely necessary, I should say. This is taken off big time. As you can see, they raised $6,225,354. There were 18,000 backers for this project, and it made news headlines. Neil Young, who's backing it, he was on the David Letterman show, and I think a few others promoting this. I mean, this is a big deal, and it's, I believe, the third highest pledged Kickstarter campaign ever. Very impressive numbers, but there's an issue. There's an issue that I, as an audio engineer who has been recording and mixing audio for 15 or 16 years now. Professionally, I've been doing it for, I'd say, about 8 years. But, wow is all I have to say. So let's start this.
Transformation.
What happened in there?
Oh man, I just blown away by the sound. I've never heard music like that before.
That's the best sound I ever heard in a car ever in my life. As a matter of fact, it might be some of the best sound I ever heard.
No, I never thought I would hear a sound like that out of a car. That's for in a car, I should say. So it sounded incredible.
We just heard the best sounding digital music I've ever heard.
This is what music is and supposed to sound like and feel like.
That music made me feel good. Much better than I felt in a long time listening to music.
Yeah, well, I got my drug of choice. It's now potent again.
It's great.
Amazing. So beautiful.
Man, that was a joy and a treat.
Oops, I meant to pause it on Mr. Rubin here. Let me back up.
Amazing.
Okay, Mr. Rick Rubin. I paused it on him for a very good reason. So far we have people saying how great the music sounds, and I'm going to have to attribute this to probably the fact that the music they're listening to, which by the way has been verified to be HD tracks. And in the HD tracks video, I showed you the difference between the CD version of the same song versus the HD tracks version. Again, I want you to watch that video before you watch this, but it explains how songs for HD tracks are sometimes, if not always, I would say most of the time, because I know that they're not always. So most of the time, or at least in my experience, the HD track or the high quality track version of a song is mastered in a different way than CD or MP3. There's really no reason for it, other than they try to make it inherently louder, which ends up ruining the way music sounds. I go more into depth about that with that video and also my Loudness Wars video, which I'll also link to in this video description. But I paused it on Mr. Rick Rubin for this very reason. Mr. Rick Rubin has released in over about, I guess almost as long as I've been recording audio, so about like 1997, 1998, even maybe before then, he's been, at the forefront of releasing hyper-compressed music and ruining dynamics with music. Now, when Mr. Rick Rubin is hearing a mix go down on a console, he's hearing that full dynamic version. It's not until the mastering stage that it usually gets smashed to smithereens and starts to sound like shit. Now I'm going to tell you something. I can almost guarantee, and I will put a bet on it, that they are playing level matched masters, that they take the CD version and they lower the volume just like I do in my Loudness Wars video and compare that to the very dynamic HD version. I keep saying HD, but the higher sample rate, higher bit depth version. And in reality, that more dynamic track could be on CD or MP3 perfectly fine, sound the same, but they choose to not do it. For what? I don't know why. Because of this Loudness Wars insanity. So I'm going to keep going on, and I'm going to pause when it's necessary. But yes, Mr. Rick Rubin with your long beard. He just has been one of the major contributors to the Loudness Wars, especially since he was the producer of Death Magnetic from Metallica. And we all know what a mess that was. It made news headlines. It was so hyper compressed, and it just sounded sonically terrible. And it was a shame because a lot of the songs on that album are awesome, but the sonics of that album, Mr. Rick Rubin, and you know, he also had his hand in Red Hot Chili Peppers music being smashed. There's so many other examples, but yeah, I'm just gonna go on now.
So beautiful.
Man, that was a joy and a treat to just be exposed to that.
It's unbelievable to hear the difference side by side. It's you really forget listening to your iPod how amazing the music can be. Really fantastic.
Side by side with what? See, again, I think they are comparing level matched dynamic music, which is what CDs used to be before brick wall limiting became a thing, and you know, smash music. So smash versus dynamic is going to sound better. But if you put a CD version, a 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz sample rate version with the same dynamics, I guarantee you they can't tell a difference between that and the 24-bit 96 kilohertz version. And the reason I say I guarantee it is because I did a phase reversal test on it, and it proved that the levels of the differences are too low to be audible. Go watch that video if you haven't yet.
This gives it to you as good as you can get it, you know.
Wow, it was so incredibly crisp, and I would definitely use this all the time.
Wow, that's like vinyl. That's better than vinyl. This is how music should be heard. Wow.
When you switch from 192.
Interesting she brought up vinyl. Many of you may not know this, but vinyl cannot be brick wall limited. And if it is brick wall limited, the volume has to be reduced, and that's because if you brick wall limit a record or a vinyl record, it will skip. The needle will come off of the record, and that's not good because you're going to have to recall all of your vinyl records. So typically that's the vast majority of the time, they cannot and will not hypercompress a vinyl record. And because of that, because you cannot physically do that without harming the sonics, vinyl typically sounds better. But if you have a dynamic track in digital, that sounds better, in my humble opinion, and more accurate to the master tapes than a vinyl record ever can.
That's like vinyl. That's better than vinyl. This is how music should be heard. Wow.
When you switch from 192 to CD, you're like, whoa!
So it just like lops the low end off.
You know, you listen to this.
See that? Lops the low end off. And this is something that you'll notice in my Loudness Wars video. I talk about this a lot. The drums and the bass guitar are very, very highly affected when it comes to brick wall limiting. It just gets rid of the impact of drums and the low end, and this has to do with speaker excursion and some other things. If you want to read more about it, go to Loudness Wars, go to how a speaker works on Wikipedia. But you know, without that speaker excursion, which brick wall limiting gets rid of, unfortunately, music just loses its soul. They like to talk about the soul of music, the impact of music, the liveliness of music, And really that's all related to brick wall limiting, in my opinion, not higher sample rates. Now this is interesting. Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers talking about music quality. Yeah, buddy. Next time, don't brick wall limit all of your releases. But ever since Blood Sugar Sex Magic, their albums sonically have sounded like shit. And it's a shame because they have a lot of good songs. But they've destroyed them with brick wall limiting mastering. Again, I don't know whose fault it is. I don't know if it's their fault or their record labels or the record producer. But somewhere in the chain, they've had their music affected. And let's see what his comments are about Pono.
It's like listen to someone twinging on a fucking rubber band compared to, you know, the full scope of what music is.
It's true that CD quality.
Yep, the full scope of what music is destroyed by brick wall limiting.
No, the full scope of what music is.
It's true that CD quality and MP3 quality, above all or under all, is simply not. It doesn't give us back what we put down.
When you listen to like the CD version or the MP3 version, it's gone through those changes. It's sort of lost that original intention.
Dave Grohl. Man, I like the Foo Fighters. I like Nirvana. Sound City, the documentary about the music studio. You know, they talk about sound quality so much in that documentary, and then what does he go and do when they put out that studio? I can't think of the name of it right now, but the Real to Real was what they called the album, and the Sound City players, and they brick wall limited it. You spend all that time recording to tape and recording and mixing through a nice console, and then you brick wall limit it? Dude, I need to talk to these guys' reps about this. Seriously, somebody, if anybody out there who's watching this video, I've tried tweeting these people, you know, these musicians, and I've actually Solely of Godsmack. He actually responded to one of my messages about the Loudness Wars, and well, we'll see what the next Godsmack album sounds like. But I at least did get in touch with him, and you know, he addressed my concerns. It wasn't exactly a positive reaction, but a reaction nonetheless. But yeah, Twitter and social media in general has opened things up so that fans can get in contact with famous people. And Dave Grohl's one of them that I was trying to get a hold of because he seems like he's a dude who's interested in sound quality, and he doesn't realize, you know, the impact that brick wall limiting has on his music, and it's a shame.
Convenience and the portability of an MP3, oh, they're great, but it's a little bit like seeing a Xerox of the Mona Lisa.
The sound has just gotten so bad, and people don't care about that anymore. And drums don't even sound like drums anymore. And this sounds like basically like you have a record player in your car.
I listen to vinyl a lot, and I think this is...
Drums don't sound like drums anymore. Very, very good point. Again, it all goes back to brick wall limiting. You start smashing the transients on those drums, yep, they don't sound like drums anymore. But man, when I mix my music, when I master my music and I leave it dynamic, and then I'm able to turn my volume control up louder and get that speaker excursion going on, my subwoofer's pumping, you're damn right it sounds like drums.
This is the only other time I've heard a digital experience that equals that or goes beyond that.
Starting to sound like a really amazing, warm, dynamic analog recording.
Seriously, like he's...
Dynamic, interesting.
I've listened to the song 1,000 times, but never like this before. I'm definitely going to invest in one of these.
Because you've never heard it unbrick wall limited until now.
Definitely listened to the song like Heart of Gold a million times, and that literally sounded like I was hearing it for the first time fresh on a vinyl record player. It's one of the crispest sounds I've heard in a while. Definitely, it's vinyl quality.
Yeah, that's cool. It sounds like a lot different than just a regular iPod. It sounds like I'm actually there. That's cool. I want one of these really bad.
It really is a difference. It's like I don't know, curved and round and there's a dynamic. It doesn't seem like it hits a wall.
Like the sound and the feeling and the...
Oh my, Dave Matthews. His comment's actually why I decided to make this video. Dynamic and doesn't hit a wall. Very, very interesting.
Energy of it was so richer and fuller and warmer and fatter and yummier.
The highs were like butter, and you can feel everything in its place.
It was definitely more of a surround sound feel.
Yeah, that's actually something that happens typically when you mix music. You're not brick wall limiting while you're mixing, and the mix engineer is placing things in the track where they should be, and then when it gets to the mastering stage and they start brick wall limiting everything and multi-band limiting and doing all kinds of other shit to the track, all of a sudden that track separation, that instrument separation starts to go to shit. It all becomes a part of all one noise. And when you leave your masters so they're dynamic and they're not squashed, it's just like how it was being mixed the entire time. And the mix engineer spends more time on a track than a mastering engineer typically does. That's just a fact.
It was more like I was actually there.
Oh, you really hear like everything.
You're in the mixing board. Sounds like it's all around you. You're next to Bob Dylan. It's really cool.
This is unbelievable because it's all there. You're right in the middle of this amazing thing, and still you hear details. Just I don't know how that happens, but that's what it is.
You can hear the
I should say some positive things about Pono that I've liked, at least from the tech specs. They are putting a high quality digital to analog converter into the spec, and also I'm pretty sure the headphone amp will also be pretty nice. Now those are two things that probably were passed over when they make cheap parts for these players, for listening to your cell phone or even an iPod. These are typically things that they don't really concentrate on. And yes, absolutely, having a better D to A converter, digital to analog converter, and then the preamp on the headphone being better, will make for better quality. So absolutely, that does make a difference. Does it make a difference enough? Maybe, maybe not. But a lot of these comments that I'm hearing and watching here does not have anything to do with the converter necessarily, but with the actual master.
reverb from the piano and the guitars and everything ringing out like a sound I'd never heard in a song before.
The fact that
I'm glad he brought that up. That's another thing. Reverb, delay, anything with space effects will it just goes again into noise. It becomes too in your face with brick wall limiting, and you don't really hear that like you can when a track is left to be dynamic.
You can like walk around with vinyl quality sound. This is awesome. Just let me know where to get it.
Again, that mention of vinyl quality. Vinyl cannot be mixed or mastered to be dynamic or undynamic, to be smashed, unless they lower the volume by a lot. Again, this is fact. Oh, look. Ooh. Chairman of Warner Brother Records. Interesting.
A song in a deeper way. It's more moving. It's more emotional. It seems to touch your soul more.
And it just sounded more...
I don't know what he means by all that, but okay.
More analog, less sort of deteriorated. She felt it more in her bum, which was a good thing.
The ability for people at home to hear music again the way it really sounds, like we heard on records, is a big deal.
This is the moment now where people can begin to pay attention to quality again.
It's not just like something for hi-fi buffs to hear the top of the hi-hat. It's the vibe, man. It's the feel of the music gets dramatically altered.
It's great that somebody like Neil who cares enough about music and getting in its purest form is going to bring that and give people the opportunity to hear what we're hearing in the studio. Whatever year it was, how it comes off the tape, right to your ears. It's organic as it gets.
All this technology is to get out of the way
of the original experience. So if that's the deal, like if that made me feel emotional in that situation, imagine something I'd carry in my pocket where I could just like dive and like really hear the music.
The best sound quality you can imagine. How it's supposed to be listened to. It's incredible. It's amazing. The way music should be heard. It's very clever.
Just sat in the future for 2 minutes at Bonnaroo. It was pretty wild. It's a vehicle to the future.
Okay, I haven't watched most of this video. I only watched really up until Dave Matthews Band. So again, it's interesting hearing the vinyl record comments. You know, I can guarantee you that they're hearing dynamic music. And isn't it ironic that we finally, in 2014, because of the resurgence of vinyl, we're going back to, you know, an uncompressed, and not uncompressed completely, because, you know, track compression's fine to an extent, but the master being limited and getting destroyed, you know, we're finally going to get away from that. And it's something that's been going on since about 1994, 1995. So 20 years later, we're finally addressing the brick wall limiting problem. Fucking amazing. Fucking amazing.
Pono is about the music, it's about the people who make the music, and the way it sounds to us when we're in the studio making it. It's about you hearing what we hear. And that hasn't happened in a long time. We wanted you to be part of this and to help us to launch this music system into the world. It's a music ecosystem. We think that as music lovers, having you along with us from the very beginning with the special players that we're offering will be a cool thing for you to be part of and for us to be part of with you. So what is underwater listening all about? When you're on the bottom of the ocean and you have a huge tank over on your back and you in a big glass ball over your head, that's kind of, you know, you're walking around in the murk and there's big fish down there. That's kind of like listening to an MP3.
Okay, that's bullshit. I'm gonna just call him out right now. That's a bullshit explanation of MP3. But I'll let him continue.
And when you're listening to a CD, you've risen to, you know, maybe a couple of 100 feet below the surface, something like that. And you're still underwater. You're not quite in air. But when you make it to...
Again, I don't know what this guy is talking about. CD is a perfectly capable format. There's no... you know, it fits perfectly within humans' hearing capabilities and doesn't go much above it. A typical human being can hear between 20 to 20,000 hertz, and CD can reproduce up to 22,000 hertz and goes all the way down to 20 hertz and has a noise floor of negative 96 decibels full scale. Now, if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, it just basically means that the CD format really was engineered to be for the human ear. That's who we make music for, other human beings. We're not making music for dogs. We're not making music for whales or dolphins. They don't need to hear under 20 hertz, you know, and actually a lot of times when you master audio, you lop off like around the 30 hertz area just because it takes up too much of the mix. It's not really necessary because most speaker systems can't reproduce anything below like 40 or 50 hertz. So, yeah, we just lop off around 30 hertz because most music really just doesn't benefit from it and you're taking up the mix headroom or the master headroom. So yeah, anyway, back to this video.
192, you actually break through the surface and you're breathing air. And the feeling is different. Actually is a visceral relief. You feel good. Your body feels better.
Okay, that right there makes me want to link to the Dan Lavery article about how 192 kilohertz is actually more inaccurate than 96. He gets into it more than I can really elaborate into this video. A lot of technical things, but basically 96, and actually he says 60 is the ideal sample rate, but 96, because typically your sample rates on analog to digital converters are 44.1 kilohertz, 48 kilohertz, 88.2 kilohertz, and 96 kilohertz, and then it jumps to 192. But most plugins only support up to 96 kilohertz. So I personally say that 96 kilohertz is the ideal sample rate. And for a long time there, actually I still think he doesn't make analog to digital converters above 96, but he does make digital to analog that go up to 192. Just so that it supports that. But I know a lot of plugins don't support that playback mode, and really it's a waste of space. And 96 is also a waste of space for playback purposes, for delivery purposes.
Investigation into sound, and
absolutely,
and how it's supposed to be heard.
Yeah, very telling, almost angering.
You can hear what the MP3 does physically, the visceral,
how it's destroying the sound of music.
I mean, there's a way that it hits you aesthetically, but then there's also a way it hits you physically, and then you can feel the difference.
Yeah, there's a narrowness and
when it's not
flatness. And on CDs as well.
Flatness, narrowness. Both of these issues can be addressed by proper MP3 encoding and, again, not brick wall limiting. The narrowness might be from the stereo. There's a trick you can do with some MP3s that you can avoid if you encode it properly. And it's called joint stereo. But I don't believe. I think there's a perception bias that the 192 uncompressed file is better than the MP3. But when you do a phase reversal test like I do in one of the videos, you find that really there isn't much difference, and the difference that there is inaudible. It's just not able to be heard. So again, perception bias is a very, very strong thing. Look it up. But the best way, now of course this is a marketing video, so they're not going to do it, but the only way we can get a fair assessment of this is with a double-blind ABX, is what they call it, an ABX test, where you have 3 files. You're going to have the CD quality version, you're going to have the high sample rate version, the Pono version, and you'll have either the CD quality version, the MP3 version, or the Pono version. And you're not going to be told which is which. And you're also going to level match them as best as possible. So again, a double blind test is the only way to really poll people on this, because there's all kind of factors that go into audio. But anyway, continuing.
What we just heard. The CDs are small.
But it's like hearing a different song. I mean, you're not hearing the same song.
The thing that amazes me is touching on what Joey is saying, is the width of the stereo field. Mm-hmm. That was a real surprising difference. How wide the stereo image was, and then the extension on the bottom, and the smoothness of a vocal, and things like reverb, tails, and all that kind of business.
Yeah, and there's a space in songs that you don't hear with digitally compressed files. And 96 is so superior to the way most music is recorded these days, and even that was paled
compared to the top.
The jump is exponential. You really can tell and feel it. Yeah.
So the apathy, like I'm in the studio all the time and work with people, and they're like, well, it doesn't really matter because nobody's going to hear. They're just going to listen to it on MP3.
Yeah.
Right. That's out the window. Now we can like make it how we want it to sound.
Like rescuing it.
Yeah, it's crucial.
And it's an artist-driven movement to take it back.
Isn't it sad that the music that I've been recording ever since I've had a prosumer level analog to digital converter, The music that I've recorded is recorded at higher sample rates than commercial release music has been for the past few years, or really for a long while, you know. And like, why would my indie music, you know, the music that's not really going to have a wide audience necessarily, be recorded at a higher sample rate? It makes almost no sense, but these are the type of decisions that record companies make or record producers do. And it was just silly. It's like, you guys have all this money and you're going to compromise on quality, you know, by recording at 44.1 kilohertz, which, by the way, as much as I say as a playback medium, high sample rates doesn't really make sense. Recording and mixing at higher sample rates and higher bit depths does make a difference. It definitely does. But, okay, continuing this video. So I know this video is probably like a half hour or more.
You're gonna drive?
I'll drive.
I couldn't drive this mother.
That's okay, but you can ride.
I can ride.
Here we are.
We had one of the great sound experiences of our life. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. And you could feel, you know, what kind of an impact it can make in terms of really addressing so many of the problems that exist in today's record industry. The sound is absolutely amazing. And we were, you know, transformed by listening in this fashion. It was fabulous. Neil is so dedicated to doing this. I know what his mind is like when he decides to go after something. There's no stopping him. This is going to be a huge, huge breakthrough in terms of, you know, sound technology. And it's really exciting to be around.
When a kid hears a song for the first time, you got to remember, these are young people. They're fresh. They're peaking. All their senses are there. Their vision is great. Their hearing is amazing. Their physical abilities are at their peak. Everything is tuned in, just like nature meant it to be. There's been very little damage. So just so I can sleep at night, I want to bring back Pono. I want to bring back real music. Pono means righteous. Pono is the one, the whole. It's a Hawaiian word. So I want everybody to hear music that way. That's why, you know, we're on Kickstarter, so that we can share this with everyone, and everyone who loves music can share in the release of Pono and the launch of the real music experience in the 21st century. That's what we're here to do.
There's nothing wrong with that, not at all. And I actually welcome having dynamic music brought back into our homes, into our, you know, our airplane rides, into our cars, wherever we listen to music, bringing that back to the pre-1995 sound. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're trying to say it's because, you know, your music player is the cause of that, that's just not true. You know, let's all be honest. It's about the brick wall limiting. It's about the overcompression of music. You know, I've already shown people what that's about. I've been reading about the subject of brick wall limited and loudness wars, and actually Neil Young commented on the loudness wars, so I know he's aware of it. But yeah, this to pawn this off as something that's going to make poorly done masters sound better, which is kind of what this is getting at, is just not the case. And I really want to raise awareness of this fact, because people will be disappointed if they play their old MP3s or even their CD rips that were made, you know, between about the years of 1995 and really even to this day. You can go on the Dynamic Range database, Google it, and then look up your albums. And then the lower the number, the less dynamic it is. That's just a fact. You know, again, I record, I mix, I master music in my humble studio, and keeping things dynamic makes it sound better. Bottom line, I don't need Pono. All I need is something that isn't smashed to death. Anyway, I would like to challenge anybody who works at Pono to do a shootout. Now, you guys got to come over to the East Coast because I know you're doing listening samples over on the West Coast. I don't live there, so unless you want to fly me out there, I like to see California again. But yeah, I'd like to see what exactly you're playing for people, and you know, I'm calling people out just in the idea of fairness, the idea of truth. Look at this. See all this press coverage they got? Lots of press coverage. You know, and again, it's all about ignorance. I'm trying to stop the spread of ignorance. And again, if this Pono player has a better digital to analog converter than an iPod or other typical media players that are released these days, that's awesome. But please don't try to say your more dynamically mastered song can't sound as good on CD. And by the way, a part of the thing that I did, I used the rate brain sample rate converter when I was downsampling a 96 kilohertz master and putting it into CD quality, and then comparing them and phase reversing and showing that scientifically there's very little difference, and the only differences are in the higher frequencies and at very low levels that you can't hear between a high sample rate and a CD quality version. It's just indisputable. So yeah, I like to challenge Pono. My name's Adam. I am the voice, the producer behind Real Home Recording, and I'm putting the challenge out there. You probably won't accept it because it'll get in the way of your marketing, but if you really want to tell the truth, let's do it. Let's do it. Come to the East Coast, or, you know, if you guys have a listening event nearby, then I will go to it with my camera crew, and I'm gonna challenge you guys in person if you don't address me virtually over Facebook or Twitter or whatever, you know, because I've already put the challenge out there. It's just a matter of you guys responding, and I think this is a good thing. That, again, you want to bring dynamics back to music. There's nothing wrong with that. What I do find wrong with it also is the premium charge for a quote unquote HD audio track. You know, why should I have to spend, you know, $10 more for an album that should have been mastered properly to begin with? But whatever, you know what? I'll just buy the albums that I want to buy and suck it up, and the ones that I don't, I'll just go listen to on YouTube. This has been Adam for RealHomeRecording.com.